This evening what we're going to do is talk through obviously how to use some various principles from cognitive science, cognitive psychology, and obviously from just other general reading about how we can actually implement different ideas and principles into our GCSE theory lessons to make them stick. A lot of the stuff I'm going to talk through is based on research, and then obviously the other half of it is based on experience and running a program at the moment with our GCSE Year 11 curriculum, just to actually see how things go. What we're going to do tonight is as follows. It's going to start very simple. We're going to start very basic, and then as we go through the session, going to add more depth to it, more layers to it, more levels to it, to obviously make it a little bit more challenging as well. So the idea then is, like with a normal lesson, we're actually building up depth to it so we can actually understand what we're going to be doing. So in a moment we're going to be looking at obviously why do students actually forget things. Then we're going to look through some research, talk about obviously some principles which we can actually stick to our lessons, and then actually look about how we can redesign curriculums and schemes of learning and that sort of thing, so that students actually in the long run remember things a bit more effectively than they had done before. First thing that I'm going to be looking at is obviously why we're here, and obviously the reason why we're running this course. Part of it is that a lot of the time we have those moments where we actually deliver some absolutely fantastic lessons with our students. We teach them the definitions, we go through all the key fundamental points about the topics we're teaching them, we cover through things with examples, we get them to write, contextualise things, answer exam questions, but then over time it could come to like a week later, we actually then find out that students have actually forgotten stuff, and that's the thing. Hopefully what today will do will actually talk about and actually start looking at some of the studies about how we can actually minimise the forgetfulness that happens in lessons and over time, and actually look at some of the reasons why it is that students actually do forget things, and how we can actually go through about actually developing that a little bit better. There's been an extensive amount of research over the last 25 years, and probably they've uncovered more in the last 25 years than they have done in the previous however many years people have been studying the mind and the memory. Lots of ideas coming through: Willingham, Bjork, Sweller, Rodiger, Nuttall on the screen there, and obviously ideas through from Twitter as well, which keep coming through. And it's getting those ideas and actually looking at them, investigating them and reading them, and actually trying to understand obviously how we can actually implement stuff into our lessons. Those are really fantastic books to read. Just in the chat box, I don't know, have you read upon any of those books so far, Mike, at all, or are some of those titles quite new to you? Okay, I really would recommend, especially Why Don't Students Like School, which is by Daniel T. Willingham, and then Make It Stick is a great book in the top left-hand corner, and then The Hidden Lives of Learners by Graham Nuttall, again another fantastic book, just for opening up and actually explaining things a little bit better. Now there's still gaps in what some of the research is looking at, because obviously the brain is so complex, and some of the stuff which I will say, like most things which keep happening, if you look through the research, it seems that some solid stuff is coming through, and then after a while a new research paper comes up and actually contradicts what other things have said. So what I've tried to do is pull out some of the stuff which through lots of research and lots of the books it is repeated and kind of comes forward again and again and again. So there we go. The problem is though that with all that different bits of research that go forward, it's quite easy to see how it works in a research project, and actually how in a laboratory experiment under controlled conditions, how things actually work in that setting might not necessarily work in obviously the completely evolving lesson that unpicks in front of you. So it's trying to look at today, hopefully, how we can get some of those key principles into our lessons, because like I said, a lot of the research which is out there hasn't fully explored how those principles of memory actually work with students in lessons, teaching a variety of different subjects on a variety of different days with different types of teachers, with different class sizes, that sort of stuff. So again, it's about trying to match up what we get from the books and the articles and the research journals, and trying to get it to best fit into our lessons. One of the things we're going to look at first is it nature or is it nurture which actually is a big underlying factor in terms of why students actually forget stuff in your lessons. You hear these things that students turn around and say, oh yeah, but I've got a poor memory, which obviously goes through to the nature. or is it actually down to nurture? Obviously, the fact that students have been brought up in an upbringing where obviously their memory's been improved through different things which parents have done to them, or things which obviously schools have done with them to obviously improve that sort of memory. The answer is it's actually a bit of both. I still don't think there is a definitive answer, but you know that there's an element of genetics, you know, in terms of the how students' brains are formed, but then obviously the more students are exposed to more knowledge and repetition and that sort of stuff, and obviously they build up their depth of knowledge and things become easier to memorize. So it is quite a complex thing, but the nature versus nurture debate is worth thinking about. A good little book to get started on, just to understand about the biology of the brain and how the brain actually works, is by Dr. Andrew Curran. And it's obviously talking about how the brain actually works. You know, the fact that, you know, it's a very complicated system that works up there. Over 150 billion nerve cells. That the whole idea is actually trying to get students to develop these neural connections where they're building up these long-term memory schemas and things to get them to obviously memorize information. And obviously with the idea about the plasticity of the brain, you know, memories can evolve and can be developed, and learning can be improved, and connections can be strengthened. You know, all these things link together to memory, and it's just being worth in your own time outside of this training program, just investigating it a little bit more, so you kind of have a bigger understanding about actually how things we are guessing they work. One of the things I want to look at as well is the process of, is there an infinite capacity in terms of what's actually in our minds and that sort of thing. You know, there are some people which I've heard just anecdotally saying that everything that we ever come across or learn or hear about, we remember, but the fact is we just can't find it. And it kind of seems like, is there an infinite capacity in terms of our brain? Well, again, we're not quite sure. And it is quite a complex scenario to find that out, and I'm not sure if we will ever find out how much the capacity of our memory is. One thing just to kind of think about though is this is Harry Barrack, 1984. He looked at a study where he looked at people's memory for Spanish vocabulary and grammar, which they got taught back at high school. Just to talk about retention levels, after 5 years, he met with those people, or he met with people who had left, obviously, high school after 5 years, and tested them on the Spanish grammar that they had actually remembered from what they learnt back at school. And he found that retention rates after 5 years actually dropped significantly, but for the next 30 years, they stayed quite stable. And even after 50 years, people could still recall Spanish, even though they'd never used it since they were in high school. So the question is, do we store everything that we learn? I'm not quite sure, and again, the research which Barrack has actually looked for and actually found out is that, you know, a lot of things, even if you're not using them, are actually stored in our memory. 50 years later, still remember grammar and vocabulary from Spanish lessons which you got taught 50 years ago, shows that things are sticking in there for a long term. But the thing that we're going to talk tonight about is actually how to make those things stick in the long term in our actual subjects, obviously GCSE PE. And the thing that we want to try and do, the goal in our lessons, is first of all look at the way we teach, and is it the way we teach? Is the reason students are leaving our lessons and 3 months later, when we do a unit test and we've included questions from previous units and so on, and these students score really badly on it, is it our teaching which has caused that? Or is it, like I said, down to obviously what students do? So